Okay, everyone, this is video number 2 on embedding quotations. So let's take a look at this information. Okay, so in looking at this, which of the following lines taken from page 88 of Looking for Alaska by John Green has proper MLA in-text citation? So take a minute and take a look and decide which one is correct. All right, it should have been pretty obvious to you, right? If after everything that we just went over, don't want to do that. All right, so it should be C. Hopefully you found C. It's the only one where everything is properly punctuated. The quotation is ended by quotation marks, followed by parenthetical information, author's name, page 88, end parenthesis, and the period goes after the parenthetical. No comma in between the author's name and the page number, and you certainly don't put the word page in the in-text citation. Okay, so here we just a reminder where the punctuation goes, please. All right, so what if the quote you're using ends with a question mark or an exclamation mark? All right, so if it's part of the quote that you're quoting, then you keep it as part of the quote, right? And then you use the period to end the sentence. So, for example, what is the matter, Nick? Do you object to shaking hands with me? Question mark is part, right? It's part of the quoted material from the book. So the question mark remains inside the quotation mark. Then you still need to cite where that's from, parentheses, Fitzgerald, page 179, and parentheses, period. Okay. So you can see you keep the question mark and then you also include the period because it ends the sentence. Because remember, we never, ever, ever, ever start a sentence with a quotation. I'll say that again. You never, ever, ever start a sentence with a quotation. There should always be some sort of context for the quoted material. And that's now, you want to avoid doing something like this. Just simply, for example, Green writes. It's not that it's wrong, it's just it doesn't contain enough context to understand the quote. So here's some things you need to think about. It doesn't give enough background information. It assumes that the reader knows the story. It's abrupt, mechanical, clunky, especially if you begin every quotation that same way. Twain writes every single time. I will be bored by that. And it's too formulaic. So you need some sort of transition, a frame, background to explain what is happening in the quote. And the more that you try to do that, the better your writing will be. So, for example, Miles Pudge Halter, the story's protagonist, is drawn to the energetic force of Alaska. A girl at his new school and explains, if people were like rain, I was like drizzle, and she was a hurricane. So notice everything before the quoted material sets up the context for the quote that comes. So from the direct quote. So you just provide some information for what's going on before you actually put the quoted material in. No floating quotations. And so that's what's going on. The reader has a better understanding of what's going on in the story when the quote comes up, and just elevates the writing and the quoted material. You sound like you know what you're talking about when you provide context for the quotes. Okay, so you can, now this, obviously you're talking about hurricane, and so you talk about the energetic force of a hurricane that's similar to the force of the girl. That's great, but you don't need to get to that level. If you can't, that's fine. You should try, but if you can, it's okay. You just really need to make sure that you're doing something more than simply Twain writes, okay? All right, so what is the proper tense to use when quoting source material? Which one? You all know at this point, present tense, right? So We write about literature in the present tense. I've said this before, but we'll try it again. When you open the book, the things that are going on in the book are happening in the book, always. Every time you open it, it's like they're happening in that moment. If you can try to remember it that way, you can do a better job of present tense, okay? So it is not past tense. Even though the events happened fictionally in the past, they are always happening in the book, all right? And it does matter, right? It does matter. And you should try to be consistently in the present tense. All right, so past tense versus present tense verbs. All right, so notice present tense verbs: argues, not argued; believes, not believed; cautions, not cautioned. Okay, so you get it. You want that S on the end that makes it present tense and avoid those past tense ED verbs. All right. Should you include quoted material in your introductory paragraph? No. No, 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 no. Avoid the crutch of beginning your essay with a quote. Avoid it, please. Quoted material needs to be analyzed and explained within body paragraphs. So if you put it in the beginning of your essay or your letter or whatever it is that you're writing, then you're not going to explain it, right? So that just leaves the quote sitting out there. So you want to put the beginning of the essay in your words. And this is important in this particular assignment because I'm asking you as a student to be persuasive and argumentative to the school board that you're writing to. And so you want to make sure that you begin in your own words. So avoid that crutch of beginning, because I know sometimes it's really hard to get started and we flounder with the beginning, and it's easy to just put a quote in. Don't do it, okay? Don't put quoted material in your introductory paragraphs. All right. Remember, we went over this before, but it's important to remember. So you can absolutely alter the original quotes as needed in order to make sure that your writing stays consistent. All right. So you can clarify pronouns. You can add information if it's necessary to make sure the readers understand the quote. You can adjust verb tense to make sure that your sentence flows correctly. All right, so you need to make sure that any changes, any edits to the quoted direct quote material are indicated by brackets. All right, these little brackets. So let's say you want to quote in about, endangered species. All right, so if there are not enough young to balance deaths, the end of the species is inevitable. All right, so pretty much a vague quote, right? So you want to make sure you add information in order to make sure that the reader understands. Okay, so an embedded quote in a body paragraph sentence with minor edits would look like this. Goodall paints a dire picture, reminding the reader that without, quote, enough young to balance deaths, the end of the, all right, and so now you need to know what species you're talking about. So you add in brown spider monkey, and that is in the brackets because you've changed from the original language. And so you indicate that by the brackets, and then you can finish the quoted material the same way you would anything else. End quote, parenthetical, page number. You do not need an author's last name there because it appears in the sentence, Goodall, right, at the beginning. And then you end parenthesis, period, end of sentence. So now you know that your reader understands what species you're talking about, but you've also indicated to them that you've changed something from the original language. In this case, you took out the species and put in brown spider monkey. Now, the important thing is that you don't want to change the meaning of the quoted material. If you edit it too much and you change the meaning, then it's no longer doing what you wanted it to do. All right, so make sure you use all quoted and paraphrased material as the author intended, okay? So otherwise, it's going to detract from what you were trying to do in the paper. All right, so if a quote you want to use in your essay is longer than 4 lines, what should you do? 4 typed lines, okay? So 4 typed lines is where you need to draw the line on either a simple quote, like we've been doing, or a block quote. So anything more than 4 typed lines is a block quote. Now, first thing you should think about, is it necessary for you to use all of that quoted material? It might be better for you to cut down the quoted part to the section that you absolutely need and then incorporate that into your sentence, right? So, and that's what I'm suggesting here. Whether you want to actually use that much of a quote because you want more of your voice as opposed to the author's words. So look at the quote and think, okay, if I really, really need all of this, or can I just take out the snippet that is the most important part to persuade for what I'm arguing? And then you can paraphrase the rest and put it in your own words, okay? So that's the first thing you need to do. I get it. Sometimes you do want to use a very particular quote, in which case, by all means do it, but really think, do I need all of this material that is in Twain's voice? Can I just limit the part that I need from Twain's voice and incorporate it into a sentence of my own voice? Okay. All right. So the rules on block quotes are a little different. All right. So you place the quote in a freestanding block of text. Block quotes do not use quotation marks. The entire quote is indented 1 inch from the margin. You maintain your double spacing, however, and for whatever reason, the parenthetical citation comes after the closing punctuation mark, but only in a block quote. Okay, so those are the rules. So you typically lead in with a colon. And so here's a block quote example. All right, so notice you're making an important point. So notice you begin with, there it is, the colon leads into the quote. You indent the entire quote over, but you maintain the double spacing. The indentation indicates that it's quoted material. That's why you don't need the quotation marks. The spacing of it with the indent is what indicates to the reader this is quoted material. So then you keep the indent for as long as the quoted material is there. Then you end the quoted material, put the period, and then the parenthetical information. All right. And then you go back to the rest of your paragraph. Notice you would never indent the next line after the quoted material because that would mean you did not explain your quote, and every quote always needs explanation. So you are back in the context of the paragraph. Okay. So that's for anything that is more than 4 typed lines. But you should really think carefully before you use block quotes, especially in something as small as this. Now, I am going to attach this worksheet to your Edmodo page today. This gives you some examples about how to embed quotes into your papers. It gives you some examples of strong lead-in words that you can use in present tense to help you remember that, okay? So these are different ways that you can put quoted material into your essays. All right, so I will post this on there too today. The last thing I want to talk about is the Purdue OWL page. To go back to that, remember I gave you that citation in your assignment packet. So you can go here. Remember, if you're really struggling, you can use this source generator in MLA. What I want to point down is in this left, if you go over here to down here, formatting quotations, everything I just went over is on this page, using short quotations with examples, longer quotations with examples, poetry. Hopefully none of you are quoting poetry. I don't think you would need to, right? But here, works cited page. Here's a sample works cited page for you. All right. So you can see all the different ways that they've quoted works cited. Ugh, annoying with the ads though. Here you can go down here. This is great. It's a PowerPoint presentation, another version of what I just went over with you. You can just watch the PowerPoint. It has voiceover. And again, it explains everything. If you're really, really stuck on something and you're not sure, you can ask me, but you can also you can go to the right here, style.mla.org. Style.mla.org. And it's basically the MLA handbook online. So you can go in and use any of this, and it will help you here learn everything you needed to know. Look, interactive template. You can fill in the information that you have for your sites. It will help you out for anything that you may need in terms of questions. Okay, so if you go into using MLA, look at this. Document sources, right, which we went over in terms of the 9 things that you need in your works cited. Here's setting up your paper, right? So here's how you do it. Ask MLA, writing tips. Anything that you can, if you're really stuck, you can use that website too. Okay? All right, so I'm going to post the 2 PowerPoints in addition to these lectures for you to have reference for, and that handy dandy worksheet as well. All right, thanks.